Okay, hyperbolas. That is, imagine taking two parabolas and graphing them and making them face away from each other. That's kind of what a hyperbola looks like. And then vertical would be when you have two parabolas that are facing opposite of each other, going up and down. And then a horizontal hyperbola would be like two sideways or horizontal parabolas that are going away from each other. And we are going to omit the word focus. We don't need that. So you can go ahead and cross all, oops, nope, don't cross that out. The word focus, foci, don't need any of that. We will still be dealing with A's and B's, and we have a new, I guess, kind of vocab term called the transverse axis, and that is just the distance. So it's kind of like your major axis. Transverse and major are going to be equivalent or the same thing. It's just the distance from your two vertices. So transverse is just the distance from your vertices. If it's a horizontal, then it's going to be a horizontal line. If it's a vertical hyperbola, it's going to be a vertical line. And then you'll also see the word conjugate axis, and that's going to be the distance from your co-vertices. So it's called the conjugate axis. And so transverse is similar to your major, and conjugate is similar to your minor. Now, the only difference in this is that now the lengths or the numbers do not matter. So your the distance from your vertices could be shorter than the distance from your co-vertices. So the numbers don't matter in a hyperbola. And the way that you tell with a hyperbola how it's a horizontal or a vertical is whichever variable is written first. So I guess the tricky part when you're putting it all together is the rule for ellipses is whichever number is bigger, like the A is always bigger. And then in a hyperbola, the A and B are always written, like the A is always under the X, the B is always under the Y, but you tell if it's horizontal or vertical based on like which letter is written first. So let's take a look at the formulas. I'm going to cross out the focus. We're also going to cross out equations of the asymptotes. We're not going to learn that. Your center is still at HK. Then how we're going to graph these is we're going to create a rectangle in a sense. And that's kind of how we're going to how we're going to draw our hyperbola. The A, like if you take the square root of A, that's going to be going left or right. Like those are the numbers that will be going left or right in the X direction. And then the B will be up or down, like where we're going in the Y direction. So X direction and then Y direction. Now, how you tell if it's horizontal or vertical, it's horizontal if the X is first, it's vertical if the Y is first. And in a hyperbola, we will not get caught up in which value is bigger. Okay, so let's look at number 1. This kind of looks similar to number 1 on the notes from the ellipses. So how do we get this into our standard form? How do we make it equal to 1? We're going to divide by 100. And you get y squared over 4 minus x squared over 25 equals 1. My center is where? 0, 0, so I'm going to put a dot here. Your graph never actually touches the center, which is kind of strange. Like your hyperbolas don't touch the center. That's just the center point of what we make a rectangle. Now, is it going to be going, like, is it a horizontal hyperbola or a vertical? Horizontal because why? Because the y is first. So this is where it gets just a little trickier. You have to keep them straight. Hyperbolas, it's whatever is written first. Ellipses, the last section, is what number is bigger. So I'm going to, from my center, I'm going to go up and down how many units? So I'm going to go, like, whatever is under the Y is how many units I go up and down. So I'm going to go up and down 2 units. And these are my vertices. So my vertices will be at 0, 2, and 0, negative 2. So I draw my vertices first.
I thought B was always up and down. B always the same.
No, so in a hyperbola, it goes like B always stays with the Y, and A always stays with the X.
Okay.
So don't get caught up in like the A's and the B's. I don't want you to be focused on that. I want you to think whatever is under the Y is what goes in the Y direction, and whatever is under the X goes in the X direction. In fact, I really won't make you label like A and B for this section. And so, how many units am I going to be going left and right from the center? 5. From there, it creates a little rectangle, so I just kind of dash my rectangle. It is a vertical hyperbola, so I draw it going up and down like so. The reason why I make the rectangle, and we didn't talk about, and I'm not going to make you do the equations of the asymptotes, but essentially what that is like if I were to draw a rectangular, or draw my rectangle and then connect the dots of the edges, that's kind of the direction that my hyperbolas would be going. So if I had a really skinny rectangle, then it would be a skinnier hyperbola. I don't want you to draw the diagonal lines. I'm just kind of showing you what that rectangle represents. So if you have a wider rectangle, you have a wider hyperbola. From here, I don't even want us to label the A, B's, and C's. If we can label the vertices, then we are good. The length of my transverse axis would be 4, right? And then the length of my conjugate axis would be what? 10. If that's something that they asked you. Okay, let's look at number 2. It's already in standard form for me. So my center is where? 0, 0. Is it a horizontal or vertical? Yes. Did I draw the last one wrong?
No, you said it was horizontal to
Hold on. So like the length of the transverse axis would be what? The distance from the vertices is 2. Transverse is vertices. And then conjugate is the one where you don't draw. So the length of the conjugate would be 6. Yeah. The only reason that I talk about it is because it might show up in a word problem. But I wouldn't make you label it on a graph. Yes?
So like that it wouldn't be a vertical because isn't the bigger number on like...
So that's the difference between a hyperbola and an ellipse, is now we don't look at bigger numbers, we look at what is written first. So the X is written first, therefore it is a horizontal. Okay? Try number 3. So I want you to find the center. This should be x squared too. Guess there's a little typo. Find the center, vertices, and then graph. So center is 0, 0. It's vertical because the y is first. Go up and down 3, left and right 2. My vertices are in the y direction, so 0, 3, 0, negative 3. Notice my hyperbola is a little bit skinnier because my rectangle is like tall and skinny. So it kind of follows the width of your rectangle. Okay, I want you to try number 4. Now the center is changing. So try number 4, center, vertices, and then graph. Okay, horizontal because the x is first. Go left and right 1, up and down 3, and my center is at negative 3, 2. My vertices go with whatever letter is written first, so my x. So my vertices would be negative 4, 2, and negative 2, 2. And then I draw the hyperbolas going left and right. Okay, number 5, it's vertical because the y is first. Now finding the center is a little tricky. Some of you might have put negative 2, 1. But remember that h always goes with the x, and then k always goes with the y. So make yourself a note of that right now, not to get that wrong. H goes with the x, y goes with the k. Then I go left and right 2, and I go up and down 3. My vertices are when I go up and down. So my vertices are at 1, 1, and then 1, negative 5. So any questions about graphing? Okay, let's look at number 6. Now we might have to change a few things because we haven't learned foci and we aren't learning equations of the asymptotes. So I'm going to change this. And so instead of saying equations of the asymptotes, I'm going to say length of conjugate axis equals 2. So it has given me vertices at, I'm going to draw my little picture, at 5, 0 and negative 5, 0. So just looking at that, my vertices are horizontal, so that means that my hyperbola is going to be what kind? A horizontal one, right? So from this I need to find my center, and it would be the midpoint of my vertices, which is where? 0, 0. And since it's a horizontal, that means which letter is going to go first? X. So since it's horizontal, the x goes first. So x squared over something minus y squared over something equals 1. Now, my a, or whatever goes under my x, I don't even want to call it a, whatever goes under my x is the distance from my center to the outside. So what is that length? 5, and then I square it. My conjugate axis, the whole length is 2, so when I cut that in half, that means I go up 1 and down 1, because the whole length is 2. And so then my b, or whatever the distance is I go in the y direction, is what? 1, and then 1 squared is also 1. So it gives us vertices and length of conjugate axis. So let's draw our picture. Got 1, 5 and 1, 9. first thing I want to do is find my center. My center would be at what? 1, 7. Good. And is this a vertical or a horizontal? My vertices are in the what direction? The y direction, so it's a vertical. So I'm going to write my y first. So it would be y what? Y minus 1 or y minus 7? Minus 7, because it always goes with the k. Over something minus x minus 1 squared over something equals 1. Now I need to find my length. So the distance from center to outside in the y direction is what? Distance from center to outside, 2. 2 squared, 4. Length of my conjugate axis is 10. So it means I'm going to go 5 out on each side. Distance would be 5. And 5 squared is 25. Good. Okay, so completing the square after changing them. Don't be freaked out if you have a fraction here and here. That is okay. Just taking half of an odd number will get you a fraction, but it should end up working out in the end, especially if I change it to make it work out for you. So looking at this first one, would it be a vertical or a horizontal? It would be a horizontal, right? And my center would be where? 5 over 2 and negative 3. And then looking at the second one, would it be horizontal or vertical? Vertical. And my center would be where? 4, 3. Perfect, because I take the x and then the y, not 3, 4. So now I would go up and down 1, left and right 3. So on homework, change number 6 to be length of conjugate axis equals 8. Do what?
We keep putting conjugate acid because that's part of what we're learning in chemistry.
Please don't put conjugate acid on there. So number 7, change the vertices. Length of conjugate axis is 4. The completing the squares should work. Okay, good.